entire Angular application is built with components. Angular application is built with components, and component comprises of presentation logic styles. First, we are going to today discuss about how to create component using inline technique. What is inline technique is nothing but, so in inline technique, in this technique, logic, presentation, and styles all are defined in one file, that is the .ts file. In one file, everything is managed in one file. Let's see how to create. So how to create a component using inline technique. So first step, go to the Angular project. In the Angular project, in the app folder, we have app folder. In the app, so we need to create a separate folder in the app folder. So we need to create a separate folder. I will add a subfolder called components. We are creating a folder called components. Okay. So the app folder, we have components folder. Okay. Now in this components, we need to add a new file. So select a new file, and you can give the name home.component.ts. So temporarily first I am creating home.component.ts. Okay, hit enter. And I already told you, as per the rules, so the component must have the suffix .component. Extension is .ts. It is a TypeScript file. Okay. Now to create a component, we have to first design a component base, export class, and home component. So that is the class. So component is a class. And why to use the word export? Because if I don't use export, the component is accessible only inside the class is accessible only in that file. It is not accessible outside the file. We have to mark it as export. And still it is not a component. So how to configure as a component? To configure as a component, so what we need to do is we have to import. So we have to import, so from Angular core library, from the Angular core library, we have to import a component base class. We have to import the component base. So this component provides all the library. This provides all the library. This component provides all the library for configuring and designing the component. Now still this component is not having component behavior. For that we need to use a component marker. @component is a directive. Actually we call this as directive. This directive tells the information about the component, how the component is accessed, how the component so renders what it renders. All information is defined here. So in the component marker, three options are important. One is selector. Selector indicates selector indicates how to access component. Generally, selector should have app as prefix and hyphen name. This is called as, generally we call this as, this is called as uh, kebab case. You heard already about camel case. There is a Pascal case, and there is a kebab case. So camel case, that means starts with lower and will have an uppercase and again lower. So we have a Pascal case. Pascal case means every word first letter will be caps. Every word first letter will be caps. And kebab case means it will contain a hyphen between the suffix and prefix. Right? So it contains a hyphen. If there is a hyphen, these are professional technical terms. In the rules of TypeScript, they mention these terms that you should write in Pascal case, you should write in kebab case, you should write in camel case. If you are not writing, it will not accept it. It will not accept it. It is important to define this. So you need to configure this. So app home, okay. That is the selector. So that is the selector we need to configure, right? And after defining the selector, so after you configure the selector, next step is you need to tell what HTML it should render. What HTML it should render. That is defined with template. Template indicates the HTML to render. HTML, better you put in a backtick, because backtick allows you to write expression also. Here I will write heading. Some shopping home, like this we defined heading close. So, and I will write a paragraph. This is our first component, some paragraph. So this is how we are defining a paragraph. Inline documentation technique. Okay, close the paragraph. This is template. So this is the template, how you configure the templates, right? Now, so component is having selector and it is having the template. Your component is ready. And it can have some expressions. Suppose in class we have a property title. Title is having like shopping home, that is the title. Now, if you want to access this title and use it here, then we can simply remove that and we can put an expression. Generally, JavaScript expressions are defined in $flower brace. Now, Angular expressions are defined in the 2 curly braces. This is a binding expression in Angular. Now here, what we can do is simply, here we can simply configure that title and access it. So whatever title you mentioned, it can be accessed and it can be used. How to present various contents, we will see that. Initially, your component is ready. So we designed a component by using inline technique. In that, first we have to import component class from component Angular core library. We need to use a component directive that tells how to access the component and what it should render. And component related logic is defined inside the class if any logic is required. Now component is ready, so we have defined it. So first point, so what we need to do, the process I am telling you. So first point is go to src app folder, add a new folder by name components, add a new file into components folder by name. So the file name home.component.ts. And home component.ts, the logic for the home component.ts will be this. So this is the file name. Let's keep that here. And its logic, whatever the logic for that, we have to configure here. Okay. So now I will copy and paste that here. This is the logic for the home component. We defined it. Right. So this is the logic for the home component. We are adding it. Right. So let's paste that logic here. So that is done. This is the home component related logic. After writing this, it is not yet ready. Your component is not ready. What you have to do is, after designing the component, so you have to register the component. That means components are not ready to use. You have to register the component in app.module.ts. You have to register the component in app.module.ts. So what you have to do is go to app.module.ts file. There is app.module.ts file. In the app folder, you will find that app.module.ts. In this app.module.ts, we have to register that component. You have to register the component. So, and this app.module.ts file is present in app folder. And where you have to register components are registered at declarations. Components are registered at declarations. That means what you have to do now is you have to go to declarations, and here we have to add the component. Already one component is there, app component. We will import our component. What is our component? So our component is home. So we have to access home component. It will give you the help. You can simply select it. Or you have to first, what you have to do is, so you have to first import that component here. How to import the component? We have to use import and from dot slash. So we have components, in components slash home component. From this home dot component, we have to import home component class. And you need to use that class here. We need to use home component. Importing we cannot do. But what is the advantage of our Visual Studio Code is, I am deleting it. What is the advantage? You are typing the class name. It will give you a suggestion. Just press tab. It will automatically insert it for you. That line it will write for you. If it is not writing, no problem. You have to manually do that. Okay. Now we have to register the component in this declaration. In the declaration, we have to register the component. Just a syntax I will give here. So syntactically, so we have to add this line here. That means the component need to be registered here. Component is registered in the declarations. And this is the component that we created. That is registered. After registering the component, now we with your component in startup. You have to define your component in startup. So for that, what we have to do is two things you have to do. So set your component. So set your component in Bootstrap. Set your component in Bootstrap. And the second step, you have to use it's a selector. It's a selector in index.html. So what you have to do is go to Bootstrap. In module Bootstrap, that means you have to set your component in Bootstrap of app.module.ts. So here we have to keep your component. So that means which component? Home component. You can add with other components also. Currently we will keep our component in Bootstrap. Remember here bootstrapping is nothing but loading is called as bootstrapping. Actually, I will tell you a simple point. Bootstrap is not CSS bootstrap here. Actually, so we have an Angular application. This Angular application first loads into browser. When it loads into browser, first what it will do is Angular application loads static DOM. After loading the static DOM, it will load the framework. After loading the framework, compiling, processing, everything will happen. That means building and compiling will happen. After building and compiling, that static DOM is converted into dynamic DOM. So static DOM is converted into dynamic DOM. The process of converting static DOM into dynamic DOM, this process is called bootstrapping. We call that as bootstrapping. So bootstrapping is a technique. So of is a technique of loading and starting your component. So that means which component you want to load and which component you want to start, that you have to define in Bootstrap. Okay, after defining that in the Bootstrap, now go to index page, because our website starts with, ours is a single page application. Our application starts with index.html. Go to index.html. In the body section, you have to tell which component to start with. In index.html, you have to define the component, and the component is accessed by using selector name. And what is our component selector name? App-home, that is our component selector name. That means, remember, we should not design anything directly in the body of index.html. We should not design anything directly in the body of index.html. You have to design components. Everything is designed in component, and from the component you need to access and use it. You have to define from the component and you have to access and use it. So you should not directly keep anything inside the home index page. So already we designed a component. It is ready now. Let's start this project. To start the project, I told you, open this project location in terminal. Open the project location in terminal. Open in integrated terminal. That means shopping project. And here you have to run ng serve. When all the options are ready, now it starts. So that means what we have to do in index.html. In Bootstrap, you have to configure that. That means you have to say Bootstrap. In the Bootstrap, you have to keep home component in the Bootstrap. So this we have to define. After that, in index.html, just you need to keep this logic. In index.html, you need to keep that logic. That means in the body, you have to keep that home HTML. That's how we need to define. So these are all the steps we need to follow. So then it is ready. Once you follow all these and you configure everything, now it is ready. Once the compilation is finished, so it is compiling here. Once the compilation is finished, remember, if there is a problem in any hierarchy, it will show the problem. That means sometimes what you do is you forget to register the component after creating. Sometimes you forget to keep it in the bootstrap. Sometimes you forget to keep its a selector. Then it will show the errors wherever the errors are present. Now compiled successfully. When compiled successfully, open and here open the browser and request. And currently it is compiled successfully, and you know that it will show you that it is running on this localhost 4200. So we need to request it. So let's request that. So localhost and 4200, and you can see that it will get that and it will display. That means our component is working fine. Our component is working. So every component we need to design in this way. This is inline technique. I will show you another technique. This inline technique. So how do we configure with inline technique? So we will discuss about that. Initially, so this is inline technique. Okay, fine. Now important is here we have only design and some logic also. Logic is nothing but, so we have some content. In home component you have some content and we are displaying. You can see here you can use all the logic just like what you have learned. For example, suppose I want to present some interactions. That means I need to design some object. Suppose I created a product. Product is an object. And the product object contains name. So some name, some JBL, some speaker. And it contains some price. So price. So some price. So, and it contains some in stock. So that is true or false. I need to present this detail inside this here. Then I can just keep that here. I will keep here a heading. So product details. And we can access and present that information. I can access and present. I am using data list. So data list close. And here I am designing data term. And the term, okay. And in the data term name, how we can give name and display a data definition. So it's simple. You have to use the binding expression, and we can access here. That is product object name property. So we can handle all the interactions here. So another data term is price, and here I can access so the product price, product dot price, and data definition. You can use expression stock expression. I will put here data definition, and here I am using an expression like, so product dot in stock is equal to true, then question mark, I should print available, colon, I should print out of stock. We can add all the manipulation here. Now you have the logic and we are presenting that, and you can see it is going to present that and display. So it is going to present and display. So you can see the output, it is going to display those details. And we want some effects, we want some effects. And the effects also configured and defined. So effects also configured and defined. And generally effects are configured and defined by using, effects are defined by using styles. How we can add the styles in the component, how you can configure the styles in the component and define the styles in the component. Actually, what you can do is here in the selector, after selector and template. So after template, we can keep here, so styles. Styles is an array. Styles is an array. It is an array of styles. We can configure the styles and we can define the styles. So how do we add the styles and define the styles? So it depends on, generally it depends on, styles completely depend on what is the effects you want to give, just like style attributes. Whatever the style attributes are there, we have to use the style attributes in the same way. We need to use the style attributes in the same way. That means generally style attributes we have to enclose in the flower brace. We will have an attribute and a value. So we need to configure the attribute and value. So generally, so the attribute, how you configure and how you define. Generally, to define the attribute, what we need to do is just we need to keep here a simple selector. Selector means heading to. And for heading to, what effects you want to apply. So you can configure the effects and you can define the effects. So that means let's write here. First, I will keep a quote because the array contains a string. In the string, I will put here first heading to. Okay, for heading to, what effect you want. You can configure the effect. Suppose I want color as red. I can define that. Multiple, you can just write how in CSS, text align to center. You can configure all of them in this way. If there is one more effect to add for paragraphs, then you can put a comma and you can put another. This is for P for paragraph. And for paragraph, suppose I defined some text as a color as some blue, like this. I want to add some for another DT, data term. And data term I want to define here as so font weight as bold, like this. Yeah, we are configuring the effects for the styles and defining them. That is how we can write the style. And you can see that these styles are applied to the content and display. Styles are applied to the content and display. So that means we can define everything. We can configure everything in one file. We can configure everything in one file. That means the logic, the presentation, and everything is configurably inline technique. This is the inline technique. So just an example I will give here. This is an example, and this is the code, the sample code for all the presentation that we have given. So how to create a component with inline technique, how to design the HTML, how to add the effects, how we can configure the effects. So you can use your general CSS effects and you can configure them in the style. So this is one technique. There is another technique. Another technique is we can maintain everything separated into files. Here all are present, all are configured in one file only. All are configured in one file. We can maintain in separate files, we can configure in separate files. So that is code building technique. We will see that how we can manage them. There is nothing like which one is best. I told you already. The best is decided according to the situation and behavior of the component in our application. If we want loosely coupled extensible, then we cannot go with inline technique. We have to go with the code behind techniques. So this is one option. The process is very important, remember, because in the beginning days while you are practicing, if you miss at one point, that means you added a component but forgot to register. You registered but forgot to keep in Bootstrap. You kept in Bootstrap but forgot to keep in index HTML. And in index HTML, you are giving one selector name. And in Bootstrap, you are giving another name. Then it will not match. These all problems will come in the beginning days. So that's the reason you need a good practice for this. Up to this, everyone clearly understood? Huh? Up to this, everyone clearly understood how to design a component and configure the component. Is it clear to everyone? Right. Now we will see how to handle with a code behind technique. How to handle with a code behind technique. Code behind technique means everything we maintain in separate files. Let's do that. Go to project now. In the components, we will do one thing. In the components folder, we will create a separate folder and give it as login. Login is a separate folder. Now for every component, we have to maintain 3 files. One file is for logic, another file is for presentation, another file for styles. So we need 3 files. So what we have to do now, create a new file. First one, login.component.ts. Okay, good. In the login folder, another file, login.component.html, that is for effects. So, and another file. So login.component.css. All these are ready. So TypeScript, HTML and CSS, all these are ready. Now we are configuring this. Now first we have to go to TS file. And designing TS file, how to do that? First import component. So from and Angular core. It is required everywhere. And we need a component decorator. Okay, but in that some changes I will tell you. Export class login component. Okay, fine. And here we will put a title as user login. We defined that. Fine. Now in the component, we have to define selector. Selector is app login. The selector is app login. We are defining that selector. And here we need to define this time not template. We have to use template URL. Template means directly it tells the tags you want to present, the markup you want to present. Template URL means it indicates that the presentation comes from separate file. And you have to tell that file. Template URL, what file? So you have to define the file. File is login.component.html. That is from where the presentation will come. Next, styles URLs again. Styles URLs is an array. Here you have to tell. So login.component.css. Can one component use multiple style sheets, sir? Can we use multiple style sheets for one component? Can we use multiple style sheets for one component? Of course, yes, we can use multiple style sheets. That is the reason it is array. Sometimes you will have a doubt like, sir, how do I know it is a string or a number or an array? What you can do is, in Visual Studio Code, one advantage is, if you want to know what is the type of this styles URL, so then right click and go to definition. Right click on that and say go to definition. It will show you that it is a type string array. Template is a string. Style URLs is a string array. And styles also a string array. So because as a developer, many times you have to work with some classes which you haven't learned also. Because in your company, somebody has designed a class and he sent you. You have to continue that. First, you should know what properties it contains, what types they are then you can go to the definition and you can understand what the contents are about and everything. Now here, app login is our startup. It is the selector name. It gets HTML from here and down. Now in this logic, we have just only the title. Now where to design the HTML? So go to HTML file, login component HTML. Here separately you can maintain the HTML. That means here I will create a data list with a data term, some username, and here data definition input type is equal to text and data term, so say password, and data definition, so and input type is equal to password, and here we will keep a button, so that is some login. That's the presentation. What effects you want to give? You can give the effects. You can give the effects in CSS file. Go to login component CSS, and here we can write div. So justify content to center and align items to center. So width is equal to some 200 pixel. So then some border is 2 pixel solid, some dark cyan, something like this. Some box shadow, we are applying 2 pixel, 2 pixel and 3 pixel and dark cyan like this. We are configuring these options, and padding is some 30 pixel, and data terms, so we say font weight as bold. All these are the effects separately we are maintaining. Now your login component is ready with markup, it is ready with CSS and the logic. Now you need to keep this in the startup. Remember, it will not start with login. You have to keep it in the startup. So we need to go to app-module.ts. App-module.ts. In this, first we need to register the component. So here at the home component, we have to register login component. In the declarations, we have to register the login component. After registering the login component, keep it in the startup. So login component. After keeping it in the startup, now you will find some error. It will not come. You can see in the source, in the console, it is showing error. Why? Because, so what you mentioned in the startup, that must be inside index page. That means go to index.html. In index.html, here we have to give app.login. We can start with multiple components also. I'm just giving one. So, and you can see that after doing every modification, save, then the login is ready. That means our login is ready. We designed the login component and configured it. So this is how we need to configure, and we need to define the component hierarchy. That is the basic thing. Now, what is difference between previous and now is all are cleanly separated. We are maintaining separate. And whenever you are designing the component here, observe, suppose app login. Suppose I am giving here login. A different name I given. And you can see some errors will come here. And inspect. In the inspect console. In the console, you can see that here it shows some error. And it says that does not match any login. In the Bootstrap, it doesn't match with the login. That means I will go here. In the index.html, I will just use login. There is no app prefix here. We are just using login. So that is what we have defined. And you can see in the output, now it shows that. But we said that we need a kebab case or we need this case. Those are all rules. Understood? Those are all rules. And rules means you have to follow the rules. Otherwise, your team will report them as problems, because in programming traditions, we need to follow the rules and we need to design as per the rules. Without that also it will work, but we should follow the rules and design everything. In current 11 version we are currently using, in 11 version it is, these errors are suppressed actually. In the 10 version and older versions, it will show error also. It will show a warning saying that that name should be, in kebab case, you should have an app as prefix. It will tell you. So in the latest version, they suppressed those errors, but you have to follow the tradition correctly. You have to follow the tradition correctly. You need to define the tradition correctly, right? So always use the same traditions and configure. This is the approach of creating and configuring. And app login does not match with the elements. And in our login component, the selector is app login. In the module login component, it's fine, working, right? Now this is the basic approach of how we can create. This makes good because it is cleanly separated. So we can easily extend the files, we can easily configure the files, and we can easily manage the files. That is cleanly separated, right? Yeah. 1 second. Yes, right. Now, in this approach, everything is designed separately, configured separately file. Actually, we have even more shortcut technique of generating the components. So we have commands. Through the commands, we can generate everything and we can just customize them. For example, see, open this components location in terminal, right click and open in integrated terminal. So it is opened in the terminal. After opening in the terminal, here you can write the command simply ng generate component and component name I want to give register. And this is actually every component generates 4 files. That means HTML file, CSS file, TS file, and a testing file also. Every component have a test file. Currently we don't need test file, but you can see that a test file is also generated. There is shortcut. Shortcut is nothing but you can use all these terms like this: ng generate component and register. You can write like this: nggc. Make sure that you are generating the component and running this command in the component folder, because you created all your, or in app folder. So that is the location for the component. And when I hit enter, now see what will happen. Automatically it will generate a component for us. So, and everything is ready for us. It generated all the files. And remember, you can create a inline component also like this. You have to use the commands for them. Inline component also you can create in the same way. Inline component you can create in the same way. So the component with the styles, without styles you can create. Observe carefully now. All the files are generated for you. So you can see in the components folder, there is a separate folder register. In that all the files are added for you. And you go to the TS file. In the TS file, logic is also readily written for you. All the logic is readily written for you. You need to just change what you want. All the logic is readily written for you. HTML is there. CSS is empty. You can put all the CSS and design it. Just you need observe carefully. In app module also, register component is registered. Your component will be registered. That's good. Now you can see, just keep it in the startup. You can just keep it in the startup register component. And in index.html, and you have to use so app register, and I defined register because you observe here the register component TS file. You see the selector name is according to tradition only. According to the tradition, they give that name. Everything they generate for us. And you can see register currently working. And whatever HTML is there, it is displaying. Currently HTML, we haven't done any modification. We can just change this and register user, and it is able to handle and it is able to present that. So this is through command. Through the command, we can configure and we can define. Through the command, we can configure and define. That's how actually it handles the approach and defines the approach. So this is working with components. How do we create the components and configure the components? Through the command, you can generate the component. ng generate component and component name. You can just define this shortcut for generating the command. Other techniques also I will tell you. But this is ready. Component is ready. Now, once component is ready, now you need to understand how it is better than JavaScript and jQuery. How it is better than JavaScript and jQuery. How it can handle interactions, events, and how it is more better than them. Why people are using this? That means what are the advantages now? That means how all the logic and interactions are managed. Here we need to understand a concept, how we can deal with data binding, and how we can deal with event binding. Event binding, data binding, how works in Angular. If you know that, then you can design all your JavaScript, jQuery examples in Angular with less logic, more functionality, you can easily handle them. Now, what is data binding and what is event binding technique and how to use them in Angular? That we will see in our next session, right? Tomorrow we will discuss about that, right?